starting in Elms, TMS, USAConnect.com. If you don't have a login for Elms, please let us know. We'll help you figure out who your administrator is at the dealership and get you a login to get in here. So at this time, I'm going to click on the upper left-hand corner here and get into Insight. Insight for me is going to start with the national view. Now, for some of you that might have multiple Toyota stores, you might have a multiple view too, where you need to go in and select which store you're looking at. Reminder right off the bat, particularly while we're early in the month here, to go ahead and back up a month to get a full month of data. We'll show you month-to-date metrics, and here we are early in the month. There's just not much to look at. So we'll go backwards a little bit. Over here on the left, you see the calculator where we have our provider tools. We now have 2 reports in beta now. We had just added last week the trade-in report, and that's what we'll focus on today. So I'll click into there. I'm going to jump right into our first example. Our first example is from one of our most popular providers. In fact, it is our most popular provider behind Kelley Blue Book. It is TradePending. And we'll go through each metric one by one to start, just so we have a good baseline of what's happening here. So I am looking at one of our friends in the Boston region, Berlin City Toyota of Portland, Maine, obviously. Starting with impressions. Impressions is any time the call to action for the trade-in tool appears for the customer. And I should note while we're talking about impressions that all of the metrics we cover here are highly manipulatable by you or the provider. So at times this will get a little convoluted, but I want to encourage you to understand kind of where you're at, what your needs are, and how you might manipulate the impressions or other parts of the process to change what the consumer sees, and more importantly, perhaps how your salespeople or your BDCs might approach these opportunities. So visits with impressions, basically this number matched against the visitors on the site. And so you can see most visitors with this store receive about 4 impressions. So let's get into trade-in started. So very simply, we go into the trade-in experience and an iframe opens up, or a pop-up frame opens up, and we track that hit there. Vehicle selections. Now, this is one of the reasons that this report's in beta, because these guys come from engineering. They're naming these things and it's not really our same language. So vehicles selected, obviously with a trade-in, there's always a trade-in. But this is going to represent a vehicle of interest that's being sent in the XML code. You'll know that sometimes you get trade-in leads, there is no vehicle of interest, and sometimes you get them and there is. That's what this is. And so of the 528 starts, we had 180 vehicles of interest with that. And what that tells me is that a lot of these leads were submitted on an SRP or a VDP, where the provider has automatically calculated that vehicle of interest and sent it to your CRM. Form initiations. Again, we're in beta. I apologize. This is a little confusing. It's not the amount of times a form started. It's actually the amount of times that we reached the PII portion of the form. Okay, and we abandoned it at that point. So I'm hoping to rename this to something like form abandonment rate, because basically it's telling us we got to the point where we need to put our name and email address in and we decided to leave or move forward. So in this case, we lost 20 at that point, but we had 41 go in and actually submit the form to our CRM. And that's what we're tracking there. Now, I'll get into these other metrics here in a little bit. You'll notice that we don't have any appointments here and we don't have any completions here. And the reason is that the trade pending form behaves a little bit different than some of the other providers that we have. And I'll show you that here in a few minutes. But let's go into this and actually do kind of a live run through on what's happening on this trade pending site. So I'm on an SRP, and right at the top of the page, I have one primary call to action, which is the trade pending banner. And so you'll note that a number of our providers offer this banner on top of the VDP or the SRP as a call to action. But in this case, we also have a value trade built into the SRP tile itself. And then if we clicked into the VDP, that call to action exists there as well. And so you can see in this one why we're getting so many impressions. We're averaging 4 impressions per customer. So a lot of call to actions to this for this tool. So as you can see, I've already kind of started here. I'm gonna go ahead and evaluate my my Highlander hybrid. It's the limited platinum. So a good experience here. It's very quick. We get right into the form start. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and use my mystery shopper and complete the form. And we're going to get my market report, which is going to give me a value. And for some of you on the call, I have recommended TradePending to you. One of the big reasons I often recommend TradePending is for this reason. It is a very slick form. It's very quick for the consumer. At this point, I get the value and I can manipulate it a little bit. Oh yeah, I drive way more than that. So I need to update that. It updates my value. But this is really where this experience stops. Is I have this data that's given to me, the value comes back in a range, and we're done with this experience. So if you look back at the metrics, this explains, oh yeah, we got a ton of impressions, the starts kind of make sense, and we had a vehicle come in, so that's probably when I did it on the SRP or something like that. I get a vehicle of interest, and then we have our 41 submissions, and then the experience stops.